Before I start this preview of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I first want to thank Warhorse Studios and PlayOn Games for being my first official sponsors on this channel. You see, there I was playing through the first game just a short few weeks ago, and suddenly I get an email saying, "Hey, do you want to play the sequel a full month before it comes out? We'll pay you." And well, I'd be a fool to say no, so here we are. Now, if you do decide to get your hands on KCD2, then remember to use the link in the description or in the pinned comment below. Also, I've made sure to avoid spoilers as best as I can, but as our view on what constitutes a spoiler might differ, I simply cannot guarantee if you see something on screen sometimes that might be a spoiler to you. Then again, I've tried my best here. Alright, so first, what are my feelings on this game so far? Well, after playing for around 12 or 15 hours or so, I'd say that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a definite Game of the Year contender. No, that is not a joke. That is to say, I've racked my brain to find any points to complain about, but so far, I really have none. That could be because I recently played through the first game, so the experience is still fresh. Case in point, Kingdom Come 2 does seem to do everything better than what the first game did, but not at the cost of its core identity, thankfully. You see, one of the most common concerns I've seen has been older fans worrying that KCD2 will simply be a different game than the first one. And it is, but everything you loved about KCD1 is, as far as I've seen, still in KCD2, but better, like the combat and the side activities and skills. And we'll get to that in a moment, but first let me give you some context to what this game is about, yeah? So Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 essentially kicks off where the first game left us. Our lovable idiot Henry and his good friend Hans Capon has been sent on a mission to deliver a message to a lord in a faraway land, and on their journey they unfortunately run into some obstacles that completely derail their journey. And soon after this unfortunate series of events, Henry has to, yet again, make it on his own, and it's up to us to shape him into a man yet again. And this brings me to yet another big concern older fans have had. You see, because Henry already went through his hero's journey, going from useless peasant to capable knight in the first game with tons of skills, perks, and masterful swordplay, the question becomes, where do you go from there? Well, because of the previously mentioned events in the intro, Henry is essentially depowered to level 1 again, losing most of his proficiency except for a few others, like the ability to read. And well, while you still have to suspend your disbelief a little here, I still think it's done really well. And let's face it, playing as a maxed out Henry from the beginning of the game wouldn't be any fun now, would it? Speaking of said events, I am really enjoying the main story of KCD2, and I'm glad that Warhorse Studios hasn't skimped out on writing, dialogue, and cutscenes here. There's tons of smart banter. Henry and Hans feel like actual brothers, and there's just so much chemistry between the actors that you can't help but being pulled into their hijinks.
Whew. You were right about our stench. Let's hope this water isn't too cold. You wouldn't want your pride and joy shrinking.
The mocap performances are really good, and small things like grunts and other expressions feel really human and really helps making all the dialogue very organic. While we're still on the subject of dialogue, the in-game dialogue scenes have also been noticeably upgraded, and there are now 6 categories of choices to pick from when you're about to persuade someone, or well, 7 if you count bribery. There's also a bigger emphasis on both Henry's appearance and demeanor, as well as the type of person you're talking to if you're trying to persuade them, which on one hand can be pretty difficult to discern, yet it creates some really engaging gameplay, just like the first game did. Now, as you might have seen in the footage just now, KCD2 actively tries really hard to teach the player how to play the game during the intro. And I can say that the sequel is absolutely much better in terms of teaching you how to play at a reasonable pace. This is one of those things that I think will be huge for new players, as the first game honestly wasn't very effective at teaching you the ropes, with too much less than clear information getting thrown at you in the first hour of the game. However, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 effectively teaches you how to do things in a clear and concise manner, letting you absorb new things at a good pace. And so I think that if you're a new player, you're much less likely to be scared away by the complexity of the game, which is extremely important. For example, just like in KCD1, you can brew potions through alchemy, and in the early hours of the game, an actual character in the game explains how to brew potions correctly step by step, all while speaking in a manner where you're still feeling immersed. To be honest, I kinda struggled with alchemy in the first game, but in KCD2 the alchemy table has new mechanics, like an hourglass that keeps the time for you whenever you have to boil your potions, making it much easier to keep track of what you're doing. As a side note, I actually kept making potions for a straight hour or so because it's just so enjoyable to do.
Cooking is art, and the shit I cook is the bomb.
Now, of course, as this is Kingdom Come, we obviously have to talk about the combat, so how is it? Well, in short, it's just all around better than the first game. Not only do you have more options in terms of weaponry, like crossbows and other really interesting and powerful weapons, but the base gameplay has been revamped as well. Swordplay, for example, is very similar to the first game, but with some changes. You have 4 directions to swing from instead of 5, that being overhead, from the right, and to the left, while stabs are now swings from below. While this may seem like they've taken away an aspect of the gameplay, I think it makes combat feel much more fluid and streamlined, and personally I think it helps a lot when you're trying to create combos. Speaking of fluidity, fencing has a much bigger focus in KCD2, so now instead of striking, waiting, striking, then waiting again, you're now quickly wailing away at each other from various directions in a way that feels much more cinematic than the first game. And I don't know if it's just me, but enemies feel slightly less daunting in this game, which could be because of the improved targeting system and the fact that they simply don't strafe and flank around you just as quickly as they did in the first game. Which I'm super happy about, because that was one of the biggest complaints of mine for the first game. Another big plus is that Master Strikes are back, but they don't feel entirely necessary like they did in the first game. Also, they work differently this time around. Instead of immediately attacking after parrying an attack, you now swing from the opposite direction from your enemy's direction in order to Master Strike, like this.
That's the way! You're getting the hang of it!
Some fans of KCD1 will like this, some will not. I personally feel like it's a little more difficult to pull off, as you need to effectively swing at the same time as your enemy swings, and since enemies can feint, you're much less likely to get a guaranteed Master Strike. But I personally don't have too much of an issue with this. It definitely feels much more fluid to activate, and the general dueling mechanics have been balanced to such a degree that, as I mentioned, Master Strikes just doesn't feel as important as they did in KCD1. Suffice it to say, dueling feels much better, and you will most likely not struggle against enemies in the first area of the game too much. Then again, I played through the first game just before it, so it might just be me being really good at the game. Anyhow, archery also feels better, and I like that leveling up your proficiency doesn't take nearly as long as it did in the first game, so it won't take long before you're able to use a bow effectively, especially so if you go to the new archery trainer in the first region. This smoothness also carries into unarmed combat, and this is yet another area of KCD2 that I'm absolutely in love with, as using your fists can now be almost just as effective as using a sword if you're skilled enough. Yes, you can now effectively shape Henry into One Punch Man right at the beginning of the game, and fencing with your fists can be incredibly gratifying.
Oh, fuck.
Speaking of leveling up your skills, KCD2 has tons of new skills and perks, many more so than in KCD1, and just like in the first game, you level up your various skills by, well, performing said activities. Some really interesting new perks, for example, are Martin's Heritage and Radzig's Heritage, both of which lets Henry gain 10% more experience in specialized areas, with Martin's Heritage providing Henry a boost in leveling survival, crafting, and sword fighting skills, while Radzig specializes in scholarship, heavy weapons, and shooting weapons. As you can see, there are tons of other perks that have a massive difference on gameplay, and this is only from the beginning hours of the game. Speaking of which, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is looking to be an absolute chonker of a game, and you'll probably be running around the first region for about 20 to 30 hours or so, maybe more if you're looking to do most of the side activities. Now, as this video is just a preview, I cannot give you an actual review score, but so far I'd say that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has a chance to be my favorite game of the year. However, that all depends on how the rest of the game holds up, and I'll give you guys a final review as we close in on the official release. Again, remember to use the link in the description and the pinned comment below if you're looking to buy Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and again, thank you to Warhorse Studios and Play On Games for sponsoring this video. This has been Mr. Holton, signing out.